That's what I want to do. All right. So hopefully it's, well, wait a minute. I don't trust myself. Hold on for 1 second. It's recording. Okay. So I'll go back. Yeah, I have to admit, I am a little out of it. The events of the last couple of days have kind of thrown me off a little bit. Spent, I think, all day yesterday in front of the television set.
Yeah.
And then the night before, I stayed up trying to wait for the results of the Georgia election.
We didn't stay up.
But that was an amazing good day, and then it was followed by a really bad day. So, but let's go to the Talmud. All right. So where do we start? Let's start with Tanu Rabbanan on page 10a. All right. So we've been talking about how rain falls, the falling of rain. So we start with the Braita. Tanu Rabbanan, Eretz Yisrael nivreit techila v'chol ha'olam kulo nivra levasof. So the Israel was created first before anything else. The land of Israel, I should say, the land of Israel was created first, and the rest of the world followed. And because we have a verse, and again, once again, they use the verse as a proof text. Ad lo asa eretz v'chutzot. So here the translation is, while as yet God had not made the land or the fields. So, or chutzot can also be like surrounding areas, like in modern Hebrew, chutzot Yerushalayim would be like the suburbs of Jerusalem. So, and here they're reading Eretz as Eretz Yisrael, not Eretz's land. And so it was created Eretz and then the chutzot. So Eretz first and then the rest of the nations.
Explain something to me. Mm-hmm. I spent a year at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. This was before we moved here. And we joined the Nassau Swim Club in the summer. And I think it was on 4th of July, we showed up and found two very distinguished mathematicians engrossed in conversation, with one saying to the other, the world was created at noon Jerusalem time.
Okay, well, they...
and I never would have dared try to get in a argument about something like that, Leon Ehrenpreis, but Eli Stein says, Leon, under no theory of creation is Jerusalem older than the universe or than the world. But anyway, I thought this verse, that might have been the kind of thing that came out of this verse. Or this Braita.
This may be
right. Well, I think when the rabbis make statements like this, they could have believed that it actually was created before anything else. But I think obviously it's also, to suggest the prominence of not just the people of Israel, but the land of Israel. So that precedes everything. Look, we have statements that the world exists only because the people of Israel exist, and that if ever the people of Israel are wiped out, then the world will be God will wipe out the world. There's no point in the world. So I think these are statements to describe the prominence of Eretz Yisrael. By the way, I think it's interesting you just mentioned about being at the institute at Princeton, because there's a young woman or a couple who's coming to the math department this semester, who just came from Princeton, from that institute. And she had emailed me about where the best neighborhood to live in. So
who is that?
Her name is Yaim, what's her last name? Cooper, maybe? But she's just, I believe she's on a fellowship, maybe? Or
okay. It's a name I don't recognize. I haven't totally absorbed what we've done the last couple of years since I retired, but...
yeah, in fact, and then there's another, this is getting off topic, but then there's another person coming from British Columbia, I think, who's coming to the math, or she interviewed at the math department. I don't know if she got the job, but Peter Cholak told me that she had I had asked Peter Cholak about this other person, and mentioned that this young woman had called me about the Jewish community, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know she was Jewish, but we just interviewed her." So I don't know if she got the position. So the math department will have two new Jews in the department. Okay. So anyway, so using this verse, they want to prove that Eretz Yisrael is created first among the nations, first among the lands, I should say. And not only that, Eretz Yisrael mashke ota hakadosh baruch hu ba'atzmo v'chol ha'olam kulo alav kulo al yedei shaliach. So another difference between Israel is God waters Israel directly. The rest of the world is watered from through it. Well, it says an intermediary here. We'll see in a moment. It's also maybe the runoff. But the verse, again, they have a proof text. Hanotein matar al pnei aretz. He gives rain on the face of the earth. God is the one giving the rain. V'sholeach mayim al pnei chutzot. And then, of course, it's a parallel statement from the book of Job. It's parallelism. Sholech, he sends water to the face of on the fields, but they've already read Eretz is the land of Israel. Chutzot are the other nations. The other nations come afterwards. Oh, Sholeach, he sends water. So it's a shaliach, it's an intermediary who waters the other nations, but God directly waters the land of Israel. Here's another statement about Eretz Yisrael as prominent. Eretz Yisrael shotam me gshamim. Eretz Yisrael drinks directly from rainwater. V'chol ha'olam kulo mitamtzit. The rest of the world from a residue of that. Again, using that same verse as a proof text. So Israel gets first dibs, and then the water flows out from Israel. Eretz Yisrael shotat techila v'chol ha'olam kulo v'lo asof. And Israel drinks first of these waters, the rest of the world afterwards. Again, using the same proof text that the one who gives rain upon the land and sends water afterwards upon the fields. And then it's a mashal. A mashal is an analogy. La adam shemigabel et hagvina. Miguel's needs the cheese. Notel et ha'ochel. Umaniach et hapsolet. So what does a person do when they're making cheese? You have this leftover stuff, the whey. But what he wants is the person who's making it. The main thing is the food, is the cheese itself. The refuse. He uses the word refuse here, but it means the whey. The whey is for everybody else, so they get secondary forms of food. Okay, a marmar. Now, a marmar literally means, as he's translated here, the master said. But what it's a way of saying, like, we're going back to an earlier discussion or an earlier line of the Talmud. We're going to bring it up again. And in this case, we were talking before on 9b about where water comes from. And Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua had a disagreement about how the world is, where rain comes from, whether it comes from it evaporates from the ocean and then comes down from the clouds, or whether there's this like store of rain up above, which then comes through the clouds, and the clouds are like a sieve and the rain comes through. So now we're going back to, and they talked about the sweetening. If water comes from the ocean, which is salt water, how could you get sweet water to drink from the clouds? So I think it was Oh, it's Rabbi Eliezer who argued the clouds sweeten these waters. So mimatakin hein ba'avim. Minale. So where does he derive this? De Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So this is Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef sharing Rabbi Yochanan's teaching. Ketiv heshchat mayim ave shechakim. And it's also written in another place, chashrat mayim ave shechakim. These are two, it's really the same poem, but there are some differences. Psalm 18 and the poem that David recites in Samuel 2, exact same poem. There's a few little differences. So, and this is one of them, is that darkness, heshchat of waters, thick clouds of the skies. And then you've got another line in Samuel, the verse is chashrat waters, thick clouds of the skies. And you can see that the words in the Hebrew here, you can see they're very close to each other. Here's a chet, shin, chaf, tet, and this is chet, shin, resh, tav, tav. So they're pretty close. And Rabbi Yochanan is going to derive an answer from these two by comparing these two verses. Shakol kaf ushidei aresh ukaribe chash sharat. So what he says is, he says, take the kaf and place in the resh. So he's not really erasing words. He's just kind of combining the two words into a new word, hach sharat. Now that doesn't mean anything, but it sounds very much like if the chet were pronounced like a hey, hach sharat, then it would be the word, as he translates here, rendering fit. It's like kosher. So what he's saying is that the waters up above are rendered fit through the thick clouds. Okay, so once Rabbi Eliezer has given an explanation has given a scriptural evidence for how these waters are sweetened in the clouds, they go to Rabbi Yoshua. How does he understand these verses, right? Because if Rabbi Eliezer through Rabbi Yochanan had one explanation of the verse. Well, what are you going to do with the verse? So Rabbi Yoshua, what does he learn from them, from these two verses that are very similar? Savarla kiha. So he holds in accordance with like this. Techi ata Rav Dimi. When Rav Dimi came, Rav Dimi was from Eretz Israel, and he went to Babylonia. As we've talked about this before, there's a lot of transferring, people going back and forth from Eretz Israel to Babylonia, Babylonia to Eretz Israel. So he went from Eretz Israel to Babylonia, and he said, oh, in the West, they have this statement, Nahor anane zeirin mohi, chashoch anane sagyan mohi. So clouds that are bright, that is very thin clouds, have only a little bit of water. Clouds that are dark have a lot of water. So you had this verse up here, chat, the darkness of waters in the clouds. So that's how he understands. He understands that it's just the clouds get filled with water. And that's what he learned from the Babylonians. When you have dark clouds, that means a lot of rain's going to come out. Kimanas la hadatanya, in accordance with whose opinion is that which is taught in this other Baraita. Maim ha'elyonim b'ma'amar hem tlu'im uferotehen me geshamim. So the upper waters, how does it translate? Are suspended by the word of God. Tlu'im is hangs by the word of God, and their fruit is the Yeah, and their fruit are the waters, are the rainwaters. So then we have the proof text. Mi prima asecha tisba haaretz. The fruit of your deeds satisfies the earth. Okay, so this verse, because we've been talking about how rain comes, you've got this verse, Mi priya masecha tisba haaretz, from the fruit of your deeds, the earth is satisfied, which is understood in a baraita as that you have these waters above that hang on God's word. So who's like, well, clearly that's very similar to what Rabbi Yoshua was teaching us. So what about Rabbi Eliezer? How does he explain this verse of from the fruit of your deeds? Again, that is the fruit of the fruit of the clouds is the rainwater. So Rabbi Yoshua understands it is the water is seeded from God, and there's water up there, and then the fruit of the clouds comes down to earth. So that sounds like Rabbi Yoshua is telling us that the water, there's this stash of water up above above the world, and it comes through the heavens. So what about Rabbi Eliezer, who's telling us that it comes up from the ocean? It's simply referring to the creation situation. That is, that God created the world, and from the fruit of God's deeds, doings, the earth is satisfied, is satiated. So it really has to do with, so it fits with his understanding too. The water, that's the system that God created. Now we go on to another statement about water. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Kol haolam kulo mitamsit gan Eden hu shoteh, shene'emar v'nahar yotzei me'Eden. Right, so there's this verse from the creation story that talks about, is actually chapter 2 in the creation story, where the world is watered from this flowing that comes out of the Garden of Eden. And his teaching is that all of the world is satisfied from these special waters that come from the Garden of Eden. And Tana, and there's it's a Baraita, right? Yeah, Baraita. Mitamsit Beit Kor Shotet Tarkav. From the runoff, the extra water of a Beit Kor, which is a field in which a certain amount of seed can be planted, which they say here is 75,000 square cubits. A cubit is about 18 inches. So where were we here? Tamsit Beit Kor Shotet Tarkav. So from the runoff of a field the size of a Beit Kor, which is 75,000 square cubits, a field in which a half se'ah, which is called a tarkav. I think, what did it say down here? Where's the language? I don't want the language. I want the half 2 kav. Okay. Well, anyway, I was trying to figure out what the half se'ah size is. Oh, here it tells you right here. 1/60th of the size of a Beit Kor can be watered. So if the runoff of a Beit Kor is sufficient for a field 1/60th its size, it can be inferred that the rest of the world is 1/60th the size of the Garden of Eden. Oh, so here we got some logic here. Okay, so you got the rest. So the Garden of Eden is a pretty big place, I guess. So that now we have some more relationships. Tanu Rabbanan, another Baraita, Eretz Mitzrayim havya 400 parsa al 400 parsa. So the land of Egypt is 400 parasangs, and a parasang was a Persian mile, by 400 parasangs, which is Vehu echad mishishim bechush. It's 1/60th of Kush. Kush is here. Sometimes Kush is understood as the land of Ethiopia, but I think it is also understood as part of as Africa. That's what he says here, or most of Africa. So Egypt is 1/60th the side of Kush, which is a chunk of Africa. Kush, echad mishishim ba'olam. Kush is 1/60th of the world. Ve'olam echad mishishim bagan. The world, as we just learned, is 1/60th of the Garden of Eden. Vegan echad mishishim le'eden. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so here's the distinction between the Garden of Eden. He says the Garden of Eden and Eden itself. I don't know what, he doesn't have a note on that. I don't know how to distinguish between the Garden of Eden and Eden. I suppose the idea is that the Garden of Eden is a garden within Eden.
Up above here, it quotes Genesis 2:10, and the river went out of Eden to water the garden.
Oh, good. You're right. So yes, so they must. So that's how they're reading it, right? Good. So there's two. There's Eden, which is a place, and then there's the Gan in Eden.
Yeah.
And then there is. What was I going to say? And the world is so that so. So if what is it? 120. So the Eden is 120 times the size of Earth. Then is that how it works?
600.
That's not clear to me from this.
Right. Is the world is 1/60th of the garden, and the garden is 1/60th of.
It would
So
be 3,600.
3,600.
Oh, 3,600. Okay, thank you. See, that's a good thing we have mathematicians here. Okay, 3,600. Oh my goodness. And then, now this is a little bit disturbing, that Eden is 1/60th of Gehenna. I don't know. There's a lot of room in Gehenna. That's probably not a good sign. Okay, so then it continues, Nimtza kol ha'ulam kulo kikisui k'derag l'gehinom. So the whole, I'm not sure what the point of this is. Sometimes some of these midrashim are very interesting, and they must have some meaning. So it's because the idea here is that so the entire world is like a pot cover to Gehenna, meaning obviously it's much smaller than Gehenna. So I don't know if that's their way of describing the world. Like the world is like this big pot, like a big round pot, and the world that we know is the very top, and then the red, so that there's this whole existence underneath our world. I don't know. It's very interesting what the.
There is something like that, isn't there? About the waters, the world being in between the waters above and the waters below.
Yeah. It's just it's kind of interesting that
the cosmology here is not real clear.
Exactly. Some form of cosmology that they've been dealing with. Okay, so here's and then we finish up this this section before the next Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yoshaya, Mai dechtiv shachant al mayim rabim rabat otzar rot. You who dwell on many waters, abundant in storehouses. Migaram lebavel sheyehu otzroteha meleot bar. What is it about Babylonia that caused it to have so many otzarot, treasure houses filled with grain? Havei omer mipnei sheshochenet al mayim rabim. So, I should have reviewed this verse, but I guess the verse, you who dwell on many waters abundant in storehouses, must be in Jeremiah talking about Babylonia. So the land of Babylonia. So what is it about Babylonia that they're so abundant in grain? And we know that it was a breadbasket of the world, Babylonia at this time. So it's because they're sitting on waters. You've got the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and so the land is easy to irrigate. Amarav atira bavel dechatzda below mitra. Oh, with also that shoot, I looked up chatzda, but I don't remember what it is now. But the translation here is Babylonia is wealthy because it can grow crops without rain, below mitra, without rain. So that would also, so that makes it very easy to, fill your storehouses. You've got land, you've got rivers that you can irrigate with. But Amar Abaye, Nikitinan tovane velo yuvashane, that Babylonia holds water better, I guess. That it's swampy land there and not dry, so therefore you can grow crops all year long. So one is that you just have a lot of water, and one is that you can grow. Your growing season is much longer. So
we don't have the long growing season, but essentially northern Indiana is a swamp.
Really? It's a northern is swampland?
Part of it, yeah.
It was part of the Great Kankakee Swamp.
The other way.
Yeah.
Oh, the Great
That's one of the
Kankakee Swamp was
swamps.
one of the swamps. And
Interesting. Okay. Okay, so now we get to our new Mishnah. Bishlosha b'Mar Cheshvan, and we actually saw this earlier. Bishlosha b'Mar Cheshvan sholin et geshamim. So when do you start asking for rain? We talked about mentioning God's power to bring rain and asking for rain. Those are two separate things. Here, the Mishnah is telling us that on the third day of the month of Mar Cheshvan, usually refer to it as Cheshvan, we start asking for rain. We insert in the blessing for prosperity in the Amidah, this request for rain. Rabban Gamliel Omer b'shivabo, on the seventh day. Chamisha asar yom achar hechag. He extends it. We don't start asking until at least 15 days after the end of Sukkot, or actually Shmini Atzeret. Because you have these pilgrims who are going from who have been in the land of Israel to celebrate the pilgrim holiday of Sukkot, and it takes them a couple of weeks to get back to Babylonia. So we don't want to ask for rain and then have it be fulfilled while they're still on their way home. So it's very thoughtful. So we wait. So Rabban Gamliel says it's the seventh day. And we saw earlier that's the halacha. But of course, we're talking about Israel, rain in Israel. Now we're going to talk about outside of Israel. Amar Rabbi Elazar, halacha ke Rabban Gamliel. Tanya, Baraita Chananya Omer, Uvegola, that's the diaspora, ad shishim betkufa. We don't start asking for rain until 60 days into the equinox. They translate here tikufa as the season, but it's the autumnal equinox. Amar Rav Huna bar Chia Amar Shmuel halacha kechananya. I mentioned this comes up every year, because if you look in the Siddur, it says we start asking for rain on December 4th or December 5th. And everybody wants to know, since when do we start asking for rain on the secular calendar? Why is it given a Hebrew date? And here's the reason: because it has to do with the days after the autumnal equinox. The autumnal equinox is the 21st of September, so it's 60 days after. The problem is, if you count 60 days after September 21st, you don't end up with December 4th. You end up sometime in November. And that's because, and I was really surprised that he doesn't write. He gives a lot of different, very interesting information about the 60 days into the season, but he doesn't explain why that doesn't work. You can't it's not 60 days. It's 71 or something like that. 70, well, that would be 71, 72, because it has to do with the change from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar.
Yes, so apparently Shmuel fixed the date on the Julian calendar as 60 days after the equinox, whatever that was on the Julian calendar.
Right.
And then the Julian calendar and Gregorian calendar.
But so this is what I don't understand. But the equinox is the same.
Yeah, but it wasn't set to be the equinox. It was set to be some date that Shmuel believed, and it probably was at the time that he set it, the equinox. But the Julian calendar became inaccurate.
The problem is the Julian calendar drifts with respect to the actual solar year.
Oh, okay.
Which is why it was revised, why the Gregorian calendar was adopted.
Okay, so
and then it was when the Gregorian calendar was adopted, it was set to be whatever date on the Gregorian calendar matched the date on the Julian calendar. And it corresponded to the date on the Julian calendar, apparently, but
possibly at that time,
because that's probably at the time of the change, which would have been off by some number of days because of the drift of the Julian.
Right, because it was 11. There were like 11 lost days or something.
Yeah.
No, I was bewildered, and Jay did a little investigating.
Because it still isn't right. Because according to what we just read, and Steinsaltz puts the explanation in there for Tekufa, 60 days after the autumnal equinox. But so that, I mean, it'd be like if the autumnal equinox moved 11 days, I'd understand. But that doesn't seem the way it works. It's like it's 60 days plus the 11 additional days.
I think you have to understand it as this happened at some particular time. And at that time, the date on the Julian calendar was such and such.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And that date on the Julian
60
calendar.
days later gave you a date on the Julian calendar.
Got it. Okay.
Another date. And then when the Gregorian calendar was adopted, the date on the Julian calendar at that subsequent time corresponded to a certain date on the.
I see what you're saying. And then they just kept that date.
I'm guessing
that's what it sounded like from what Jay said.
Oh, okay. Because you know, it's interesting because we that has become, of course, the date in the diaspora that you begin asking for rain, even though that's exclusively Babylonian time. I mean, it's not anywhere else. So people have talked a lot about, well, should we do it according to the time of our community and, you know, when rain should start coming? But it's never been changed. It's always,
what do Australian Jews do?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's going to be different here. And then plus, you know, there are societies where there are really only two seasons, rainy and dry. And here we clearly have 4 different seasons. So
I grew up in San Francisco, which does not really have 4 seasons.
Oh, okay.
Certainly doesn't have winter the way you think of it here.
Californians. So.
All right. So, well, here's the objection. Or they have this discussion. Ini. So wait a minute. Is it 60 days after the equinox? Veha ba'u mine mishmuel. They asked Shmuel. Me'emat mad karinan. The Tain Tal Matar. When do we start mentioning Tain Tal Matar? That's the addition to the prayer, asking for rain. Amar lahu miki me li tziv'ei levei tavut rishba. It's the time when this guy Tavut. I don't know why he got the honor, but it's when this guy Tavut, who's a bird hunter, starts bringing in the wood for his house. And why is he bringing in the wood? Because it's going to rain. So that's the day that you knew to start asking for rain. So the solution, I guess, is that Dilma idi ve'idi chad shi'urahu. Maybe it's the same date, you know, that one is giving you kind of a colloquial response, local way of, what's the guy in Puxatani Phil, you know, it's like, that's when we figure out when winter is gonna, what kind of winter it's, or spring or winter it's gonna be. And here it's when Tavut brought in his wood, that's we knew when to start asking for rain. Well, it so happens that it's also 60 days past the equinox. Okay, and
with this about Tavut the bird hunter, the house of Tavut the bird hunter.
yeah, right, yeah.
And I have no idea who Tavut or what Tavut might be, but that sounded a little bit like the language of astrology.
Oh,
And I wondered if Tavut is perhaps a constellation or.
oh, the house of Tobina at Consol. Oh, that's interesting. I don't. Let's
I
see.
have no idea. That's
Yeah,
just a random association as I read it.
Yeah, let's see. Well, okay, not that Rashi is necessarily going to understand all these details. I mean, he's going to know these things, but according to Rashi, it's connected to the Aramaic nishba, which means a net. Not that's Rashi's explanation. I have no idea if there's some other. But that's a pretty good guess. I mean, that would make more sense than some guy who's just bringing in the
local
wood. Yeah. Okay, wait. Oh, let me see.
Alejandro had a question
Oh,
put in the chat about the calendar.
oh, okay. Wait, Alejandro, what's the question? I can't. Oh, here we go. I got it. Chat. All right. Where is it? Here we go. Oh, well, your dad's not available, so you're sitting in. Very good. So is the Jewish calendar we have currently, what do you mean currently not work in the future?
No, have currently.
The calendar we have currently.
Will it work in the future?
Oh, well,
I think that's what he's asking.
Oh,
that's what I'm asking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the calendar that we have now is exactly that. So that date is that December 4th date, or December 5th, is the current date that we ask for rain. And the calendar that we have today is, see, here's the thing, is that the Jewish calendar wasn't necessarily affected by that. It was only this particular date because the date was connected to like an astrological event. So once you say 60 days past this particular event, then it ended up being related to the secular calendar in terms of dates. It's 60 days after a particular, we know that on our calendar, the 21st of September is the event of the date, the autumnal equinox. And so 60 days later, you would start asking for rain. And of course, we've got this 11-day difference because of the switching calendars. But the Jewish calendar, it didn't really affect it. You notice that all the other dates are related to the Jewish calendar. 3rd of Cheshvan, 7th of Cheshvan, and that's still true. So in Israel, on the 7th of Cheshvan, of the month of Cheshvan, that's when in Israel they start asking for rain. It's only us in the diaspora who have this relationship to the autumnal equinox that it comes out that we can predict the date on the English calendar, the secular calendar. But otherwise, the Hebrew calendar, it's remarkable. For the last 1600 years, they've actually known the math for that calendar. Now it's a little easier, but they did it, 1500 years ago without a computer. I don't know how they did these things, but obviously, there was very advanced. There's been a very advanced math for a long time. Okay, so let's go back to this. So so now this is a common kind of issue. You said to us 60 days after this event, the equinox. Does that mean the 60th day? On the 60th day, you start asking for rain? Or does it mean after 60 days? 60 days we count, and then the next day is the day for rain. We start asking for rain. So Ibailahu, Yom Shishim, Kalifnei Shishim, or Kalachar Shishim. The 60th day is itself treated as part of the period before the 60th day, or is it included in the period after the 60th day? And the answer, Tashma, coming here, Rav Amar, Yom Shishim Kele'achari Shishim. Ushmuel Amar, Yom Shishim Kalifnei Shishim. So I have two different answers. One says it's the 60th is part of the period after the 60th day. The 60th day is part of the period after the 60th day. So you're reciting, you're asking for rain on day 60. And Shmuel says the 60th day is part of the period before, so you're asking for around the 61st. Right. So Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak v'Sibanach. So there's a, how do you remember the two different systems? And the way to remember is Ila'e ba'umaya tata'e lo ba'umayim. Those above require water, those below do not. So those above, so when if the 60th day is part of the, I don't know if I get this right. The 60th day is part of is the day that we start asking for rain. Those, did I get that right? The halachas is where everyone. Wait, and so the below do not require water. So they can start asking on the 61st day. So 60 is below. 61 to 60, we wait, and then 61, you ask for rain. Those above require rain, which means that 60 is included, is the day that you start asking for rain. It's basically 1 to 59, and then day number 60, you start asking for rain. And the way that this makes sense, above and below, is that, here they explain, since water flows downward, those who live in low places receive their water from above and are generally less in need of additional water. Accordingly, Shmuel, who lived in the lowlands of Babylonia, ruled that one begins to request rain later, on day 61. And whereas Rav, who studied in Eretz Yisrael, which is higher in elevation and has greater need for rain, that's why they started the earlier date. Rav Papa says the halacha is Yom Shishim Kilachar Shishim. So in fact, the 60th day is part of the period after the 60th day. So you start, right, so that the 60th day is included. When you count for rain on the 60th day, it's after, that is included in the period after, wait, I'm not saying this right. The 60th day is part of the period afterwards. So it's day through 159, and then on day 60, you start asking for rain. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, well, we got to another mission. That was a short Gemara. Here's the new Mishnah, the next Mishnah. Higia Shiv'a Asar b'Mar Cheshvan, the 17th day of Cheshvan, V'lo Yardu Geshamim. Okay, it didn't rain. You hit day number 17 of Mar Cheshvan, right? We've been asking for rain since the 7th of Cheshvan, according to Rabban Gamliel. Hidchilu hayechidim mitanim shalosh taniyot. So the yechidim begin fasting. There's a 3-period fast. We're going to learn out what those days are in a moment. Ochlin v'shotin mishechashecha. They eat when it's dark out, but not during the day. They're mutarin b'malacha. They can go to work. Uva rechitza, and it can wash. Uva sicha, and and oil. How do they translate that? Smearing oil. Okay. Uveni'ilat sandal, and wearing shoes, or wearing sandals, and tashmish mitan. Sexual relations are permitted. Higia rosh chodesh kislev, v'lo yardu geshamim. Now this is a little bit later. It's a couple weeks later. This is the beginning of Kislev. So it's really 3 weeks into the period when it should have been raining. V'lo yardu geshamim. Beit din goes read shalosh taniot al tzibur. The entire community starts fasting these 3 fasts. Ochlin v'shotin misha chashecha. But it's the same situation. You can eat at nighttime. So it's not a full day fast, not a 24-hour fast. You're mutarin b'melacha, you can go to work. Uvarechitza, uvesicha, washing, smearing oil, unilat sandal, and wearing shoes, uvetashmi shamita, and conjugal relations. So the question then becomes, well, wait a minute, who are these yechidim that you've just mentioned? Amar Rav Huna Rabbanan. So the yechidim are the Rebbeim, the scholars. Ve'amar Rav Huna, yechidim mitanin shalosh taniyot, sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. And he also clarifies what the 3 fasts are. So it's not 3 days in a row that you're fasting. It's Monday, Thursday, and Monday. So my kamashmalan. So this is a classic question. What are we learning from this? Because we're going to learn later on in the Mishnah that ein gozrin ta'anit al hatzibur batchila b'chami shi. You can't declare a fast for the community on Thursday. You can't start the fast on Thursday. So if you're only fasting Monday and Thursdays, according to this plan, and that's because those are market days and those are Torah reading days, if you're only fasting on those days, and we've just learned you can't fast on Thursday, and it explained because that was a market day for Shabbat. They were preparing for Shabbat. So they wouldn't want people to start fasting on Shabbat, on Thursday, because you'd be preparing food for the break fast on Thursday night and Friday, and people would overrun the markets because they'd be, having all these major feasts that they're preparing for. So we learned that you can't start a fast on Thursday. So shelo lavkia, at the sharim, it just said that. So it's not to cause an increase in prices, right? Because people would run to the market for these big feasts, and you'd have and they would raise prices. Ela shalosh taniyot arishonot sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. So we've already learned, we're going to learn it. It's taught in the Mishnah that it's these 3 fasts are on Monday, Thursday, and Monday. So why is Rav Huna, who lives later, he's an Amora, he's a Talmudic rabbi, what are we learning from him? We already knew that. Why does he have to teach us the same thing over again? So there's a reason, Ma'udatema, because what you might have thought, because we're talking about 2 different groups. We're talking about Yechidim, those are the first group of fasters. And then if things are really bad, you get another group of people fasting, the whole community. So you might have thought, Hani Milei Tzibur Aval Yechilo. When it says on later in the Mishnah in the page 15b that they can only decree a fast for the community. I mean, well, it's got to start on Monday. They can't decree a fast on a Thursday. That you might have thought, well, that makes sense for the tzibur, but the yichidim, the scholars, these people are, first of all, there probably aren't that many of them. So Kamash, you could start. They could start fasting right away on Thursday. Kamashmalan. Therefore, we taught that. Therefore, you needed to teach this. That even in the case of the yichidim, these scholars who are going to start that fast even before the rest of the population, no, you don't start on a Thursday. They also start on a Monday. Tanya Nami Hachi. We have this Baraita text that says the exact same thing. When the Yechidim begin to fast, Mitanim Sheni v'Chamishi v'Sheni. That's what they do. They start on Monday and Thursday and Monday. Umafsikin b'Roshei Chodashim. And they interrupt the sequence for new moons, because it's a festival day. Uv'yamim tovim haktuvim b'Megillat Taanit. And also for any holidays that were written in Megillat Taanit. Now, what we're studying is Masechet Taanit, but there was a book, Megillat Taanit, a Megillah is a scroll, in which they had a bunch of dates of various festivals that we don't really know anymore. I guess they would have been like local festivals or special days when something good happened to the community. And this was supposedly compiled in the 2nd century, but before I think it's 2nd century before the Common Era. Well, it was eventually, it just fell into desuetude, because the only holidays that we had were we do this still, are that we would refrain from fasting, are Hanukkah and Purim. Let's see. Yes, we are going to finish the Masechet. Not tonight, but eventually. We've got it. I was hoping that we'd finish it by Purim, by Pesach, to do the Masechet Bechorim, for firstborn have to fast before Pesach, and I was hoping that we'd finish it by then, but I don't think we'll make it. I think it'll take a little longer. Got a lot more to go here. Okay, well, let's keep going. Tanu Rabbanan, Al Yomar Adam Talmidani, Eini Ra'ui Lihiyot Yachid. Now here's an interesting thing. It says a person should not say, I'm only a student, I'm unworthy to be considered an individual. Now, when I read this, it seemed like this was an act of modesty, but it seems that at least according to Steinsaltz, his understanding of it is that we're limited to talking about fasts. That I shouldn't consider myself so holy to be one of the Yechidim, and then I would fast right away, because who am I? Rather with regard to the fast of individuals, all Torah scholars are individuals, are Yechidim. So therefore, even a Talmid or a Talmid Chacham, any student of Torah should consider himself worthy to fast. And then the Braita elaborates, so who's an individual? What's the difference between an individual, a Yechid, and a Talmid? And the answer is that a Yachid is anybody who is learned, of course, in Torah, and worthy to be appointed a leader or teacher over the community. A student, Talmid, is a Torah scholar who, when asked the matter of halakha in his own studies, whatever he's studying, can offer the correct answer. And this is even the case, even if he's only familiar with the tractate of the Kalamonth. The Kalamonths would be like these retreats they would have a couple times a year, where they would come together from all over and study Torah and a particular tractate. So even if he only knew to answer the questions he had just been studying from that month, you're at the level of Talmid. So it's kind of like Talmid, and then it's Yachid. Tanu Rabbanan, we have another Braita. Lo kol harotzeh la'asot atzmo yachid oseh. Here's a different approach. Not everybody who thinks they're a yachid is a yachid. Not everybody who thinks they're a yachid should act in fast, basically. Nor should everybody who wants to act like a student do so. There are certain requirements for these levels. That was Divrei Rabbi Meir. He says, you've got certain. Not everybody you can't just call yourself a yachid or a talmid. Rabbi Yossi Omer, osei v'zachur l'tov. In fact, no, he should. You should kind of aspire to this higher level, and you'll be remembered for good. Because lefi she'ein shevachu lo ela tsa'ar hulo. So here again, it seems that we're talking specifically about fasting, but it could be on a broader sense, that if you are, to take the mantle upon yourself of a yachid or a talmid, it's not like it's just about putting it on your business card. It's a burden. You've got to fast when there's no rain. You have to join in the fast right away. So it's not necessary. It's a pain. It's a tsa'ar lo to him. Tanya idach is another baraita. Lo kol rotzeh la'asot atzmo yachid osei talmid osei. Not everybody who wants to call themselves a yachid or a talmid can do so. Divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. That's according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Bamed Varim Amurim. What are we talking about? What specifically do you mean? What's the area we're talking about, referring to oneself as a yachid or a talmid? But Devar shel shevach. That's in a case of praise. Now he translates, and this was in Rashi, that adorning oneself with the garments of a Torah scholar. So when it's not just general praise, again, like putting on your business card, it's a very specific perk, I guess, or not even how to call it a perk, but a person who was a scholar wore a certain type of clothes. One of the books I've been reading, I've enjoyed, is this book of the Matthew of Shardlake series. It's a mystery series of a lawyer who lives during King Henry VIII's reign. And they constantly talk about in this book that he wears a certain garment, a cloak, which identifies him as a lawyer. So must have been at the rabbinic period too, scholars would wear a certain cloak that would identify them. So in that case, he says, in that case, not everybody who wants to be a scholar, considered a talmid, can accept it. But where did I go here? But in a case of Albadvar Shel Tsa'arose, but if he wants to include himself in the group by, I'm going to fast right away, I'm going to, be in that first group of fasters, Zachur Lato. Well, good for him. She'ein shevach hulo el tsa'ar hulo. It's not a joyful experience. It's really a troubling experience. So good for him if he wants to be included in that class. Next baraita, Tanu Rabbanan, Misha haya mitaneh al hatza'ar ve'avara al hachole v'nitrapeh. What if you were fasting because, let's say, of the rain period, and it started to rain, or if you were fasting for the recovery of a sick person and the person got better, you said, I'm going to fast for a week, and then the guy gets better in 2 days. You should, since you've made this commitment, you gotta go through with it. Whatever commitment you made to fasting, you should complete. Then we also learn haholech mimakom she'ein mitanim lemakom shemitanim harei ze mitaneh imahem. If you're going from one place, let's say they are fasting in a certain area because there's not been rain, and you're coming from an area where there wasn't a problem, when you go to the new area, you should join in the fast with them. You got to be part of the community. Mimakom shemitanim lemakom she'ein mitanim. But if you're going from a place where you've all been fasting, where they don't need to fast, you should still, you've made this commitment and you should complete the fast. Whatever that, let's say it was a Monday, Thursday, Monday fast. Complete those 3 days because you've made that commitment. Shachach ve'achal ve'shata. Let's say you forgot it was a fast day and you ate something early in the morning or drank. Al yitra'eh bifnei hatzibur. Just because you ate something, you forgot, you had breakfast, and then it's a fast day. Don't show it off in the public. Keep it to yourself. Ve'al yanhig idunim be'atzmo. And certainly don't indulge in luxuries, in pleasant, in some kind of enjoyable food, right? Because it'll make people who are fasting, first of all, make you look bad, and secondly, it's going to be really demoralizing to the people around you. So just keep it, if you're eating, then do it in private. Shene'emar vayomer Yaakov lebanav. This is a really interesting interpretation. Lama titra'u. This is the passage where they're in the Joseph story, where the brothers and Jacob, they have no food. There's a drought and a famine, and they're hungry, and at least in the context of the Torah, and he says, Lama titru, why are you looking at each other? And but they translate it here as titru, as why do you show yourself? Amar lahem Yaakov levanav, al taru atzmechem kishe'atem sevein. Don't show off like, hey, we got all this food. Somehow the Jacob's family had food, according to this midrash. You have food, lo bifnei Esav, v'lo bifnei Yishmael. Don't show it off before your cousins, the Esav's family or Ishmael's family. Kedei shelo yitkanu bachem. Don't make them jealous of you. Don't make them envious, because you shouldn't. Well, I guess there's two ways. The way that Steinsaltz understands it is, don't make the others feel bad that they don't have food. The other possibility is don't put yourself in danger. If they're starving and you've got food and you're showing it off, they're going to attack you. But I just think it's so interesting, this concept that interpreting this as they have food. Where would they have gotten food? They had to go down to Egypt to get food. So this is kind of just a very interesting interpretation. Then it goes on to talk about this other verse in the story. Al tirgazu badarech. Don't agitate yourselves on the way. This is when by this point, Joseph has revealed himself. The brothers are on their way back to the land of Israel to get their father. And he says, don't agitate yourselves on the way. So what does he mean by that? Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar lahem Yosef le'achav. Joseph said to his brothers, Al titasku b'divar halacha, shema tirgazu alechem. Don't have a conversation about halacha, because that's what most people do when they go on the traveling. Don't have a conversation about halacha lest it cause this agitation. Now, he translates this as fall out on the way. Let's see, that's how he translates it. And then he says, if you discuss a halacha while traveling, you might get into an argument. But I think he translates it as fall out on the way, because the other possible reading of this is Rashi is don't get lost. See, so there's two possibilities here. If you're occupied with a matter of halacha, which is, it's a legal argument. One possibility is to get into a fight over an understanding of the legal issue. One is that you get so engrossed in it that you lose your way and you get lost. So those are two possibilities. And so then we have a response. Ini, that's so? V'hamar Rabbi Elazar bar Barachia, Shnei Talmidei Hachamim shemehalchim baderech, ve'ein beinehem divrei Torah ru'uyin lisaref. Wait a minute, we've got this other teaching that says that if two Torah scholars are walking on the road and they're not talking Torah, then they deserve to be burned up. Shene'amar vayihi hema holchim haloch v'daber v'hine rechev eish v'susei eish v'yefridu bein shnehem. Came to pass, they still went on, they talked, and that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which parted from them both asunder. This was, I think, Elisha and Elijah. The reason that the chariot of fire did not harm Elisha was because there was a Torah matter between them, from which it may be inferred that they had not been had they not been discussing a Torah matter, they would have been burned up. So wait a minute. Here it says you're supposed to be talking Torah. Okay. So but notice, one is or is the word here, divrei Torah, words of Torah, and one is davar halacha. So there's a little bit of leeway there. It's not exactly necessarily the same thing. But it's interesting that the Gemara does understand it as halacha in both cases. Lo kasha, it's not a problem, because hal limigareis, hal yune. One is to learn, that is, you're reviewing your material. One, you're talking about, yeah, of course you can talk about halacha, as long as you're reviewing what the halacha material is. The other one is going into depth, examining it into detail, and that's where you get into trouble. Okay, we're almost at the end here. B'matnitan tana al tafsiu psia gasa v'hachnisu chama le'ir. Al tafsiu psia gasa de amar mar psia gasa notelet echad mechamesh me'od mimaor einav shel adam. So then, since they were talking about this beraita about going on the way, that he also told them, he also gave them other advice. Don't take long strides and bring the sun into the city. That is, enter the city before nightfall. And the Gemara elaborated that don't take long strides because a long stride takes away 1/500th of a person's eyesight. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the Gemara is concerned with. And so it's not worth it to, rush. V'achnisu chama la'ir k'derav Yehuda amar Rav. Damar Rav Yehuda amar Rav. Le'olam yitzei adam b'ki tov v'yikanes b'ki tov. Shne'amar aboker or v'anashim shalchu. So they bring another way of learning that you should always literally bring the sun into the city, meaning wherever you're stopping, stop during the daytime. Don't be traveling, don't make it be a situation where you're traveling at night. And that's because you should leave when it is good, right? That's the expression for the creation. God saw that the light was good. So it's good to leave when it's light out. And likewise, it's good to enter into where you're going. And here's another, and the other verses, Haboker or Vanashim Shalchu. That's what, also from the Joseph story, when they are sent away after the first time they've been in, this is the second time they've been in Egypt. And this is right before they go catch them. And Benjamin's got the goblet in his sack. It says, Haboker or, there was the morning light, and they left. That's when they left to go back to the land of Israel the second time. Okay, so all right. Well, it's 8:40. Let's finish here. We'll pick this up next time because this carries into the next page about eating. So all right. I don't know if anybody has questions about what we saw today. But we will meet, so we will not meet this Sunday. And I'll let you all know, I'll look at my calendar because I know that you guys want to be at that program on Sunday. And I'll look at my calendar and see that week. Maybe we'll do it Tuesday night or something of that week and have the class so that people can go to the program. Okay, wait. Another. Oh, are we going to make a meal at the end? Absolutely. We've got to have a siyum when we do finish this masechet. So absolutely, we'll have a celebration when we finish it. Should always conclude learning with that. Okay. All right, very good. So we'll see everybody on, so the next time I guess so. It's possible the next time I won't see you until a couple weeks from now. Right. Wait a minute. So I got to think this through because I think the 18th is going to be my Monday night class. Well, I guess we could do Monday night and Tuesday night. I'll look at my schedule, and maybe we'll move it so that people can go to the Sunday morning program. So I'll be in touch with everybody about the next time we meet. Okay. All right. Everybody have a good night.
Okay, well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.